how did you come to understand the gospel of Jesus Christ? At what point in your life did it click for you?
Well, I'd never heard the gospel till I was 17. So I'd never been to church, never listened to a preacher. The only scripture that I was exposed to as a little kid were in scary movies. Creature from the Black Lagoon starts with a reading from Genesis, by the way, if you don't know that. And it's sort of a melding of Genesis and then evolution, right? It's like these things come together at the beginning of the Creature from the Black Lagoon. Yeah, so I didn't have any exposure to any real biblical truth. I had lots of questions, lots of frustrations as a kid. I tended to think a lot. It doesn't mean I'm smart. I just had a lot of questions. And I was pretty frustrated. It led me into a bunch of weird directions because nobody could provide me with answers. And you know what Scripture says, God has revealed himself in creation, but we all say, no thanks, don't want that. I want something that resonates with the inner me. So I started looking. I got into the occult. I got into all kinds of stupid stuff as a teenager. But the short story is I ran into a girl at the dean's office in high school. I was sent to the dean's office. She was volunteering at the dean's office. And I walked in and I saw her and I was like, what's up? And I got her phone number from somebody and I called her up and we went to see a movie. And she was the first real Christian that I ever talked to. And
wow. And you were 17?
Yeah, I was 17, yeah. She told me all about Jesus. That we sat in her living room. She pulled out a Michael W. Smith record or tape, which was not helpful. I was immediately like, oof, this guy's a dork. Why are you showing me this guy? The song the Rocket Town song is so moving. I'm like, no, he's lame. But what she was saying was interesting. The gospel was interesting. So it was the first time I ever heard it was 17. I wrestled with it for a long time. Well, for about a year. And I was 18 going on 19 when the gospel became very clear and I believed. And it kept getting clearer to me and certainly more beautiful as I meditated on it. I wasn't meditating on it. I was plagued by it. I was haunted by it because I wanted the forgiveness of sins. I wanted peace with God. I wanted all of these things that I could somewhat understand, but I just didn't think that they were really, that it was a real possibility. And it wasn't because I doubted that God could forgive. I just didn't believe that God would forgive because I hated him and the church without cause for so long. But so like God just kept bringing these Christians into my life and they kept telling me about Jesus. It was very strange. I mean, from no contact to like, I'm literally getting surrounded by Christians. And it was summer of 1990. I think I just referenced this on Sunday. The summer of 1990, or almost the fall, really. It was the end of summer. I went from not believing to believing. I was converted, boom, and the gospel became very clear, very compelling.
You mentioned that you said you had like antipathy or hatred towards God and his people without cause. What was that like? If we were to go back in time and ask 16-year-old, 17-year-old Joe, how do you feel about God? How do you feel about the church? What was going on there?
Well, again, like all kids, or like most kids, I was ignorant and dumb. And like the worst of kids, I was really proud and rebellious. So that was all kind of feeding into it. I was asking questions about why are we here? Why is there suffering? What's the point? I was suicidal for years. It was really bad. And nobody could give me any answers. My parents couldn't give me any answers. They did their best, right? But they didn't have the gospel either. And so I was really just sort of turned off to all of the superficial Christian expressions that I had seen, whether that's in pop culture or just, sort of churchy folk who, are morally superior to other people. These very superficial and tangential sort of Christian religious persons, right, that I would interact with, but like nobody that ever actually told me about Jesus. The best I got was sort of the, hey, you're a bad kid. You need to change your ways, right? Which isn't exactly evangelism. So I was just mad. I was an angry kid. I'll tell you this. As a little kid, I was beat up a lot. I got beat up a lot. I not just picked on. I got beat up. I had to learn how to fight to stop getting beat up because it's like I'm not a big guy. And it wasn't until I learned how to fight that it finally stopped. because until you do, you're just a constant target. Right. So I was angry about that. I had little man syndrome, like, hey, I'm not a little person, I'm not a baby, I'm not a punk, don't, I had all these, these pride issues going on. So yeah, I was just angry at everybody. I had a lot of rage issues. And then, so I just pointed at God. I was just like, what has God ever done to me? Not seeing what he had done for me, clearly. But yeah, just silly foolishness. The fool says in his heart there is no God, or the fool rages at God. It was just all folly and ignorance and pride.
So how did that feel when it clicked, when you understood it?
The moment of because I don't remember what date it was. Like I couldn't pick a date on a calendar, but I remember when it happened. I'm very conscious of it. Lying on my bed, reading the Gospel of Matthew, boom, the light turned on, and I rolled off my bed. I'm in shock. I'm happy. And I start praying. I really start praying, irreverently, but I'm praying. And along the lines of, you better not be jerking me around, God. Along those lines. Because I just knew God had just changed my heart. Like, I believe now. It was so strange to me because I have no church experience, no background. I'd been to church at that point 3 times. I went to 3 services at that point, which was very strange to me. And it was just your typical Baptist church service. But in that moment, I was converted. And yeah, I don't think I realized how, I don't think people do. I don't think I realized how much had changed or would change until I got farther down that road. Because I was sexually abused as a kid. And another reason for anger and rage, right? And so my plan was, when I'm done with high school, if I make it that far, I'm going to go find that person and I'm going to kill them. Like that was the only plan I had. I didn't have any plan for growing up. I didn't think I'd live to see 30. I didn't care. But that was the one plan I did have after graduating, or when I just was done with high school. And I didn't realize until later on, I wound up seeing that person again. And I'd just forgiven them. The bitterness, the hatred in my case was gone. It just, I realized like that person is lost and needs Jesus. So I don't think I realized a lot of it, the degree to which the change had happened until like you sort of uncover things. But I can remember, being with Christians and thinking like, man, I really used to hate you people for no good reason, like for no good reason at all. It was just ignorance and stupidity and false accusations. But now I love these people. So yeah, it sort of became clearer the longer. You know what it's like. You don't know what you don't know, but you also don't know what you do know as you're going along. You kind of realize like, oh wow, yeah, I get this. I understand this now. So I could see the beauty before from the outside, but once you're in the kingdom, once you believe and your heart's changed, your whole orientation, like that's a popular word today, right? Yeah. You have a new orientation given to you by God. It radically changes your perspective, your understanding, your identity. So yeah, things were very different, but yeah, it was pretty great. And I'll tell you what, my family and my friends weren't too excited about it, but my family was happy because I wasn't all dark and, suicidal. They were like, oh, he's happy. They would have been happy if I was a Scientologist, except for them stealing money from people. They probably wouldn't like that part, but you know what I'm saying. If I would have chosen any religion, they would have been happy because I was happier. They were supportive.